Have you ever fallen into long, dark periods? Bad things strike one after another, leaving you no time to catch your breath. You stayed up countless nights, worked overtime month after month, volunteered for extra tasks outside your job scope. You poured all your energy into your career, yet you received an unexpected layoff notice out of nowhere. All your long-term career plans crumbled to pieces overnight. You locked yourself in the room for years to prepare for a life-changing exam. You turned down all parties and gatherings, cut your daily rest short, and forced yourself to memorize piles of textbooks every single day. After all the sacrifice, you still got a failing score, crushing every hope you held for further education. You opened up your whole heart to friends or romantic partners. You shared your soft vulnerabilities, hidden secrets, and fragile thoughts you rarely told anyone else. You trusted them completely and treated them with full sincerity, but you ended up being deceived, betrayed, and taken for granted. That heavy heartbreak and loneliness lingered in your life for months. Or you grew up in a cold family environment. Parents and elders kept criticizing, comparing you with others, and ignored your emotional needs all year round. Every time you shared small achievements or happy moments, you would be immediately shot down with harsh words pointing out your flaws. Every time you stumbled and made mistakes, you were bombarded with long lectures saying you were never good enough. These unresolved emotional wounds stayed hidden in your subconscious for years. When waves of hardship crash over your life, most people sink into a long state of despair and self-blame. You lie awake at night, replaying all your failures over and over in your head. You lose interest in hobbies you once loved deeply, cut off contact with close friends to avoid all social interaction. You keep asking yourself a painful question: why am I far weaker than everyone around me? You watch other people walk through equally devastating setbacks, yet they stay calm, steady, and mentally grounded. This contrast pushes you deeper into self-criticism, convinced you are born fragile and unable to stand life's storms. From childhood to adulthood, we have all absorbed the same popular motivational saying: endure hardship, and hardship will temper your inner spirit. Only those who bear profound suffering can build a truly strong heart. We take this sentence as absolute truth without questioning it. We firmly believe all pain and tough experiences carry inherent growth value, so we force ourselves to swallow every torment in silently. Some people even actively seek harsh, uncomfortable circumstances just to train willpower and forge a tougher mindset. Today, I will share a subversive truth backed by authoritative psychological research. Hardship, pain, and suffering carry zero built-in positive meaning on their own. Pain is merely pain. It cannot automatically turn into strength, wisdom, or mental resilience just because you survive it. The only factor that refines and strengthens your inner core after suffering is the full set of mental processes you complete after the pain fades. How you interpret and define the setback, how you fully process and release negative emotions, how you extract actionable specific lessons from the experience, how you rebuild self-perception without tying your whole identity to one single failure. If you simply swallow pain whole and suppress all uncomfortable feelings without any follow-up mental sorting and reflection, all suffering will pile up as unhealed psychological trauma inside your mind. It will make you far more sensitive and easily shattered. Small daily troubles will overwhelm you easily in the future, instead of turning you into a resilient, steady person. We will talk about 2 core psychological frameworks. Resilience theory, post-traumatic growth theory. We reference a 5-year longitudinal control experiment from Stanford University Psychology Labs, plus Harvard's famous 75-year adult life development study. We combine real workplace cases and ordinary people's daily hardship stories. I will lay out 4 simple, low time cost daily mental training routines, which you can start practicing right after listening. These exercises never require you to hunt for extra suffering on purpose. If you frequently collapse after life hits you with setbacks and struggle to pull yourself out of long-lasting low emotional states, please listen carefully without skipping segments. Every analysis and practical step is designed to break cycles of self-hatred and despair and gradually build durable, unshakable inner resilience. Point 1. Stanford 5-year experiment debunks the hardship myth. Most people hold a severely one-sided, flawed view of adversity and growth. They firmly believe the more severe hardships a person survives, the stronger and more mature their inner world will naturally become. Many people even take the initiative to place themselves in harsh living and working conditions, convinced that voluntary suffering is the fastest shortcut to a tough personality. However, a landmark 5-year longitudinal control experiment by Stanford Psychology thoroughly breaks this myth. The research team recruited hundreds of volunteers of all ages and split them into 2 strictly separated observation groups with different adversity arrangements and reflection guidance. Group 1 participants faced short-term, controllable setbacks with clear endpoints. Professional psychological counselors guided them through structured reflection and cognitive reorganization right after each difficult experience. Group 2 participants faced endless, unsolvable long-term hardship with no chance to adjust their living circumstances. They received 0 guided reflection or emotional support throughout the 5 years. When the 5-year tracking ended, the mental gap between groups was shockingly obvious. Most participants from Group 1 built stable psychological resilience mechanisms. They recovered their emotions rapidly when facing new difficulties later in life. Closest to 80% of Group 2 volunteers developed chronic anxiety, recurring depressive moods, and persistent trauma responses. Their tolerance for small daily troubles dropped drastically compared with their initial test before the experiment. This academic experiment delivers an unambiguous conclusion. Only adversity you can process, reflect on, and cognitively reorganize has the potential to temper your inner self. Unresolved, endless suffering only wears down your mental defense systems bit by bit over time. This research perfectly explains a confusing daily phenomenon we all witness. 2 people go through nearly identical painful life events. One becomes more open-minded, composed, and capable of handling future storms. The other sinks into months or even years of lingering despair and self-hatred. The critical dividing line between these 2 opposite outcomes lies entirely in how you respond to hardship after it passes, not the hardship itself. Point 2. 2 opposite reaction modes when facing hardship. Countless people mix up mental resilience with mindless, unfeeling endurance. They mistakenly believe a strong heart means swallowing all grievances silently, bearing every blow without allowing any vulnerable emotion to surface. This misunderstanding creates endless self-sabotage cycles for millions of people. Let's clarify the academic definition of psychological resilience first. Psychological resilience, also called mental restorative power, is your inner capacity to process painful emotions after misfortune, reorganize distorted self-cognition, and avoid being trapped in long-term self-doubt and low mood after setbacks. True mental resilience does not demand you never feel sadness, disappointment, or heartache. It only requires you to grieve your loss within a reasonable window, then pull yourself out of the negative vortex through rational adjustment and extract valuable growth insights from the difficult experience as you move forward. Passive blind endurance. Most people's default coping way. When misfortune arrives, you immediately suppress all sad, hurt, and bitter feelings deep into your subconscious. You force yourself to just get over it without sorting through your inner feelings. You repeat inner mantras that you must stay strong and never break down. All unprocessed traumatic feelings are buried instead of acknowledged and released. The hidden long-term danger of passive endurance is extremely serious. Repressed painful emotions accumulate day after day. Later, an insignificant, tiny frustration will trigger all buried grief at once, making you collapse completely over trivial matters. Years of blind endurance never bring personal growth. They only build a reservoir of unhealed trauma waiting to spill over at the smallest trigger. Active, intentional mental refinement, the way to forge real inner strength. When you encounter hardship, you first allow yourself to feel every layer of negative emotion without forcing instant cheerfulness. Once acute emotional shock fades slightly, you rationally dissect the whole incident, separating external, uncontrollable factors from your adjustable personal behaviors. You summarize concrete lessons the hardship can teach you and map out small, actionable changes to avoid repeating the same pain. Most importantly, you deliberately disconnect this single negative incident from your overall self-worth. You refuse to label yourself worthless only based on one isolated failure. This complete set of cognitive restructuring steps is the authentic process through which suffering polishes your inner spirit. We use a workplace layoff case to show the stark contrast between the two modes. Two young professionals spent years working hard for their teams, took extra assignments and frequent overtime, yet both received layoff notices due to company-wide business contraction. The first employee chose passive blind endurance. He forced all grief, unfairness, and self-doubt deep inside. He avoided talking about the layoff out of shame and sent dozens of resumes every day without analyzing why he was laid off. Every interview rejection brought back all repressed pain of being fired, trapping him in self-loathing for several days each time. The second professional followed active mental refinement. He gave himself 3 full days to grieve the loss of his stable career without rushing into job hunting immediately. After his heartache softened, he sorted the incident objectively. The primary root cause was company business contraction, but he also found his personal shortcoming. He never expanded cross-departmental work experience, making him more vulnerable during large-scale downsizing. He drafted clear skill-building goals and targeted industries for future applications. When he met interview failures later, he only adjusted his resume targeting instead of falling into long depression. Identical hardship created 2 completely different mental outcomes. The only separating factor is the way you choose to process pain after it occurs. Point 3. 4 non-negotiable conditions for post-traumatic growth. After understanding the 2 coping frameworks, many viewers hold a core confusion. Why can some people grow after trauma, while others are haunted by wounds forever? Here we introduce post-traumatic growth theory, summarizing 4 mandatory conditions for suffering to polish your inner spirit. Missing any one condition, hardship will only leave trauma instead of genuine growth. Constipation 1. Full, unforced release of all negative emotions. Pain cannot be digested if you lock it deep inside your heart. You can confide in trusted people, write raw grievances in a private notebook, or reserve quiet time to cry freely. Continuous emotional suppression buries hurt deeper, leaving no room for subsequent cognitive growth. Condition 2. Objectively separate external events from your intrinsic self-worth. Most post-setback collapse comes from twisted mental connection. People equate one isolated failure with their whole life's value and capability. You must draw a clear dividing line mentally. This single negative incident is only an accidental external experience. It cannot define who you are as a whole person. Failure at one job only means mismatched skills, not that you are useless. Betrayal by one person only reflects their moral flaws, not that you are unworthy of sincere companionship. Cutting this false mental link stops endless self-attack after hardship. Condition 3. Extract controllable, actionable lessons from painful experiences. Every hardship has two parts: irreversible external factors beyond your power, and adjustable personal behaviors you can modify later. Do not waste energy regretting things you cannot change. Focus all attention on small, concrete improvements you can make. Pain turns into lasting inner strength only when it becomes usable experience. Vague, repeated rumination over past hurt will never bring meaningful growth. Connotation 4. Grant yourself sufficient gradual buffer time for full mental reconstruction. You cannot demand full recovery from heavy trauma in 1 or 2 days. Mental reshaping is slow and progressive and cannot be rushed. Allow reasonable transition periods to process grief naturally. Do not harshly push yourself to cheer up instantly after devastating setbacks. Steady, gentle reflection over time mends internal wounds and rebuilds emotional defense. These 4 interlocking conditions form a closed loop of trauma-induced growth. Nearly all online motivational content skips these 4 critical prerequisites. Blindly claiming hardship automatically builds a strong mind. This explains why countless people endure years of suffering yet never gain mental maturity. Point 4. 4 daily 10-minute mental training routines. After mastering core theory, most audiences struggle to apply ideas in daily life. Here are 4 ultra-simple daily training routines, each only taking 10 minutes per day. You do not need to create extra suffering to practice stable, anti-fragile inner strength. Routine 1. Nightly hardship sorting journal. Set 10 minutes before sleep for fixed writing. Split into 3 clear sections. First section. Record all upset, frustrating, or hurtful events of the day. Write down all unfiltered sad emotions without self-censorship. This step completes full emotional release. Second section. Distinguish uncontrollable external circumstances and your adjustable personal behaviors. Mentally separate isolated painful incidents from your overall self-worth. Third section. Write 1 tiny, concrete improvement action you can carry out the next day. Consistently keeping this journal for 30 days will clearly reduce your tendency to spiral into despair over trivial daily setbacks. Routine 2. Cognitive reframing self-inquiry practice. Anytime you sink into self-blame and catastrophic thinking after setbacks, ask yourself 3 fixed sequential questions to break twisted negative thought patterns. First question: is this single painful incident equal to my lifelong identity and overall value as a person? Second question: what parts of this difficult situation lie completely outside my power to alter? Third question: what small actionable lesson can I take away to avoid identical pain in the future? These 3 questions pull your brain out of extreme all-or-nothing thinking rapidly and guide you back to objective, rational observation within seconds. Routine 3. Small adversity daily practice. You do not need huge life disasters to exercise mental resilience. Minor daily frustrations serve as low-pressure training ground for your inner world. When you miss public transit, fail to finish pre-planned tasks, or receive cold, brief words from others, pause for 30 full seconds before falling into irritation or self-pity. Silently remind yourself, this is a small, controllable adversity training chance. I can adjust my state and solve this minor trouble calmly. Long-term repetition of this tiny mental reset will greatly raise your emotional threshold against sudden disappointments and setbacks. Routine 4. Scheduled weekly emotional buffer time. Most sudden mental breakdowns come from forcing constant self-discipline to stay strong, with 0 designated time to process accumulated negative feelings. Set 30 to 60 minutes of fixed buffer time every single week. Self-blame is completely forbidden during this window. Within this time, you can revisit past painful memories, watch emotional films, or freely vent all hidden grievances suppressed throughout the week. Do not criticize yourself for feeling vulnerable in this period. Regular emotional release prevents massive traumatic outbursts triggered by tiny trivial incidents later in daily life. Point 5. Distinguish growth type adversity and consumption type suffering. Many audiences cannot tell the boundary between growth type controllable adversity and consumption style endless suffering. They mistakenly torture themselves year-round under the disguise of self-improvement hardship. We draw an unambiguous dividing line to avoid new mental traps. Genuine growth-type adversity means short-term, controllable setbacks with clear room for reflection and behavioral adjustment afterward. Examples include one single failed exam, isolated workplace project underperformance, temporary estrangement between close friends. This kind of hardship carries extractable lessons. After emotional release and cognitive sorting, the accompanying pain fades naturally as you implement adjustments, and it will not leave permanent, lingering psychological trauma. Consumption-type suffering stands for long-term, fundamentally unsolvable pain cycles with zero space for personal improvement. Examples include years of continuous family verbal abuse, long-term one-sided emotional exploitation in romantic relationships, repetitive meaningless labor with zero promotion or skill growth potential. No matter how much you reflect and endure this category of hardship, you can never make meaningful adjustments to eliminate its source. It only steadily drains your mental energy and accumulates deep inner wounds, and holds zero value for personal growth whatsoever. Simple core judgment standard. After you complete full cognitive sorting and emotional release, can you find specific, feasible small steps to reduce this pain in the future? If your honest answer is negative, this is pure consumption suffering. Your wisest choice is to actively distance yourself rather than passively endure it to temper your heart. Countless audiences trap themselves in long-term meaningless torment due to this blurred boundary, comforting themselves with the hardship growth myth while slowly burning out their mental state. True psychological toughness includes the capacity to walk away from destructive pain, not blind, unconditional endurance of every difficult circumstance life sends your way. Closing summary: all recurring negative mental spirals follow a fixed 6-link chain. Triggering incident: distorted subjective interpretation, sustained negative emotion, evasive behavior, amplified self-blame, and increased vulnerability to new triggers. The root of endless mental internal friction lies in subconscious cognitive distortion. Blindly suppressing bad moods will only trigger emotional rebound. The 4-step permanent solution consists of cognitive recalibration to fix warped thinking, gentle emotional acceptance to abandon futile resistance, 5-minute micro-actions to break avoidance patterns, and 3-minute nightly positive reflection to reshape long-term thought tendencies. True stable inner peace never relies on forcing artificial constant positivity, nor harshly condemning yourself for naturally arising negative thoughts. It originates from objective observation of life setbacks, gentle tolerance of your own temporary low emotional states, and taking tiny actionable forward steps instead of escaping reality entirely. Most people waste months and years trapped in repetitive negative cycles purely because they always fight their own inner emotions rather than adjust the distorted lens through which they view objective reality. Once you abandon constant self-attacks triggered by sensitivity and vulnerability and learn to recalibrate your cognition, the second twisted thoughts surface. The recurring spiral of sadness, evasion, and self-blame will stop repeating. You will no longer stay up late, replaying past mistakes over and over, nor waste massive mental energy hating yourself for minor temporary setbacks. You will gain independent ability to pull yourself out of low spirits, alongside stable inner peace and long-term emotional resilience. If you often sink into endless repetitive rumination, get trapped inside long-running negative spirals, and struggle constantly with self-doubt and mental friction, remember to subscribe to this channel for follow-up psychological growth content focused on reshaping thought patterns and stabilizing your emotional state. Leave a comment below sharing the specific negative cycle that troubles you the most. I will conduct targeted analysis and customized adjustment frameworks for your personal situation. If this full breakdown of negative cycle adjustment methods brings you new clarity and relief, please leave a like and share this video with friends who also suffer from persistent mental internal friction, so more people can learn to break free from self-consuming negative spirals once and